Hey everybody, welcome back to Being a Being. Jason here. Today I want to talk about something that I love, and that is a good logical argument, especially when debating with somebody like on Facebook where they have an opinion-based belief versus using logic to make a counter argument. And the reason I like to is because I am a very literal person, and I like to base a lot of my reliance and my beliefs on the facts and evidence in the world that's presented around them. The first thing I'm going to say about logical arguments versus an argument based in personal opinions and beliefs is that there is no way to actually prove anything is absolutely true any more than there isn't. And that's where the premise of what I like about logical arguing is based on. That being said, there are assumptions made that are generally accepted as true when it comes to defining logic in terms of arguing and debating, and that's kind of the ways I like to go about it. What prompted this was a while back, a friend of mine had a post on Facebook about an assignment she had in class to prove logically that God does not exist, or if he does. And it was interesting because I got into the conversation kind of late, and a lot of people, were making the argument that God does exist because he is almighty, he is great, he is good, and because the Bible says he does, basically. So that's just kind of where I started it. I left my personal belief about faith out of it when I looked at making my point, and I went about it with the approach that there is no evidence anymore that God does exist than there is that he doesn't. So there's no way to prove either way based on our standards of current fact, evidence-based scientific understandings of the world around us. And before I get any further into it, I just want to go over what I found online here. This is a good summation of the general rules of a logistical argument. And I'll just go through and I'll read them. I know that anybody seeing this can probably read themselves, but I'll save you the trouble just in case you don't feel like reading them all. I'll just go through it really quick. The 10 Commandments of Logic. Number 1, this is a big one. Thou shalt not attack the person's character, but the argument, ad hominem. I'll go over my thoughts on these two right after I read them, but let me just get through them. Thou shalt not misrepresent or exaggerate a person's argument in order to make it easier to attack. Straw man fallacy. Thou shalt not use small numbers to represent the all. Hasty generalization. Thou shalt not argue thy position by assuming one of its premises is true, begging the question. Thou shalt not claim that because something occurred before, it must be the cause. AKA post hoc / false cause, AKA causation does not equal, or correlation does not equal causation. Thou shalt not reduce the argument down to two possibilities, false dichotomy. Thou shalt not argue that because of our ignorance, a claim must be true or false, ad ignorantum. Thou shalt not lay burden of proof onto him that is questioning the claim, burden of proof reversal. Thou shalt not assume, quote, this follows, quote, that, when there is no logical connection, non sequitur. Thou shalt not argue that because a premise is popular, therefore it must be true, bandwagon fallacy. Okay, So let me just give my personal opinions. Number one, don't attack a person's character, attack the argument. That's something I see most common, and this is really probably one of the biggest tools that online trolls use, is to just derail any kind of good discussion into personalized character attacks. Happens all the time in political and religious debate. Look at when you call somebody, I don't know, you say somebody sinned once, therefore they're not religious. That's attacking the person's character and using that to make the argument when they're not necessarily related. You shouldn't use small numbers to present the whole. This is kind of like number 5 also. Just because something happened before, it must be the cause. There could be 2 or 3 instances where something has been true in the past. That doesn't necessarily make something true going forward. And I see this all the time. Just because they drilled for oil twice in California, and on those same days an earthquake occurred. They're using that for an argument when there might be 50 other well drillings that day in other places in California where earthquakes didn't happen, but they don't bring those into consideration for the argument. You only take a slice of the whole picture when you're trying to present your facts, and you don't represent the facts correctly, and that's a bad logic style for arguing. Because the good thing about fact-based arguing is that facts can be traced and checked. So if you're gonna make a logistical argument, you should always be ready to have the facts that back up your argument. So not arguing out of ignorance is a big one too. I see this a lot in like flat earth debates, where people are just ignorant about modern science, and they refuse to believe anything modern science shows us to be true with evidence based on our current scientific methodology. And they just attack the known science based on their lack of understanding of it, as opposed to this is the one. This is really also, this ties right into 8, not laying the burden of proof onto them. Like, you have to prove your science is true to prove my science isn't, because I'm ignorant about current science, for example. So you're switching the role here. Another case of this, kind of a combination of a few things, is logical deflection, to try to navigate your way through an argument. I have to be a good person because the person sitting next to me is a bad person. Therefore, I can't be a bad person. You see this all the time in politics, especially nowadays. I don't want to get into I like to keep the non-objective out of it when I'm making arguments. So I'm just going to state this from a purely objective view. And I see it all the time with the whole case against Donald Trump for all his supposed legal issues or non-supposed legal issues. I don't know if they're true or not. I'm not a lawyer. I don't claim to be. I don't want to base my personal beliefs on them. But what you do see is Donald Trump and certain news outlets that support him whenever something comes up about his character or something he has done, they'll say, yeah, but Hillary, had this email issue. Why aren't we locking her up? And that's great. Maybe we should be doing that too, but, correlation is not causation. Because Hillary had these email issues does not impact the legality of Donald Trump's current legal issues. They're independent events. They're not related. Deflecting to one is just a diversionary tactic that amazingly works all the time. I don't know why people let that stand when they could just say, that's great, we'll deal with her on another occasion. Right now we're talking about this. That does not affect this current thing. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of grinds my gears when people use opinions to define their argument. And it's hard because we're passionate about our personal opinions and beliefs, but they're not always necessarily based on fact. For example, let's say, I don't know, I get a new computer. My argument could be this is, a high quality computer because it has the current best known processor, the current top of the line graphics chip. I have the highest speed internet I can get, etc., etc. These are things that can be proven and traced back to. Now, if I was to say I have the best computer because it looks good, or I have the best computer because it cost $5,000, I don't have a $5,000 computer, by the way, I'm just saying, then I'm drifting into the realm of opinion to try to substantiate my claim, and something like that is something that can't be proven because it's based on how I personally feel about it. And you see the same thing all the time with arguments for or against God. Because we haven't seen him, that means he's not real. No. Correlation does not equal causation. Because you haven't seen him doesn't mean he's not there any more than it means he is. Think there are tens of billions of things you never see that we know are there as much as we accept reality to be true. Now, if you want to talk about Thursdayism, which is, or the belief that, every day is last Thursday and everything else is just made up in our minds, that's a whole nother argument that has its own set of logical and opinion-based criteria. I don't really want to get into that philosophical of a debate with this. I just wanted to just really quick break down what I thought about, logical discussion and using it to help your case better. And what I just did there is an opinion-based argument. I can say using fact will make your arguments better, but that might be based out of my ignorance that, you don't know how to make better arguments with your opinion, for example. I'm open to that. And the biggest thing, about arguing in what I think is a healthy way is goes back to, kind of the burden of proof onto the person making the claim. Keeping an open mind. Let's go back to the flat earth versus the round earth debate for a second to explain more what I'm talking about. A lot of people who try to debunk flat earth theories are open to the possibility that maybe the earth still is flat, but they're looking for the evidence and the proof. Whereas most of the people I've seen that make the flat earth theory argument refuse to believe that there's any chance that the earth is round. They're not open to it regardless of any science. They just refuse to believe it and they're ignorant about it. That's the difference. And that's what I don't like, is people who aren't open to your side of the argument. they just refuse to believe it no matter what, because they're so tied into their own beliefs that they close off any other possibility. And you see that a lot with religion too. The Bible tells me God is real, so he has to be, regardless of what factual based evidence you have that he's not. Again, I'm not saying I believe it one way or the other, but this is just the style I like to use when I'm making my cases online. So I think that's a good summation of what I've been trying to talk about today. I hope others will jump in on this conversation and let me know what you think. Again, you can have fact-based opinion, or you can just have, personal belief opinion. So let me know what you think. I think it's a fun topic to discuss and explore, and something we can definitely go into further. That's it for now. I'll see you next time, beings. Bye. As always, thanks for watching. If you like what you've seen, please click like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your friends. Thanks for being awesome beings.